In a world that entices us to browse through the lives of others to help us better determine how we feel about ourselves, and to in turn feel the need to be constantly visible, because visibility these days seems to somehow equate to success. Do not be afraid to disappear and see what comes to you in the silence. And that was a quote by Michaela Cole, giving a message to writers in her Emmy acceptance speech. Hello everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Toy Talks podcast. My name, if you have forgotten or you don't recognise my voice, my name's Toy Washington, and I deliver a podcast which I believe is life-changing, career-changing, career-defining, but more importantly, just a safe space as Black women for us to congregate, share, and just find like a safe space to just be ourselves and be hyper visible to ourselves. It's not about being visible to other people. It's showing up for yourself. Now, we all know that I've been extremely ill. I have been very clear about it. I've said it on my social media, and I've been very open about how bad it's been without actually saying what it is. And there is an underlining reason. I know what that reason is. I also have a medical diagnosis, which has been amazing to receive, because it means that the treatment has flowed from that. And also as well, I'm here to just say to my enemies, I'm not dying and I'm not dead, and I'm here. And I know that there are people who do not necessarily support the podcast, and that's fine, because I don't need your support. If you don't want to give your support, okay. But it's more the negative people who I know that will, it's like the little white van, isn't it? They're sitting in the little white van, peering out, but they'll never step in front of the van and show themselves. And I definitely have used this time of being able to disappear to really like take stock of like myself, and it feels like a bit of a factory reset in a really weird way, in a way that I hadn't imagined. Because if you all remember, like I was planning and having my wedding blessing, and then literally a week or two afterwards I've been ill ever since. And it's also given me the opportunity to really see how people have responded. And it's not just people I don't know, it's people I know. You know, I'm the friend that is always there for everybody, and I'm fine with that position. I have no issue with that. But when I couldn't be there, how people have responded has been really interesting. The level of selfishness amongst people has literally made my stomach turn. And the fact that people haven't allowed me to just be sick and just get better or just focus on myself has been toxic. Toxic in a way that I didn't realise that people don't understand boundaries. They seemingly do, but when the boundaries need to be like executed, people don't understand boundaries. I've had to, distance myself from a couple of family members who what it is, it's more control. And I definitely see how some people use caring as a weapon, and I'm not that person. I've gone through therapy. I've had a very toxic mother. I've had a very tumultuous relationship with my immediate family. So I'm able to see the warning signs. And one thing about me is I know that I can get from 0 to 100 real quick. And I know the amount of energy that it takes to exude that. So I have to protect my energy. And in protecting my energy, I've had to cut people off. And I've done it in such a way that they think it's just because I'm ill. But as time continues, they're going to realise that this is a permanent fixture. Because what you're not going to do is give me wahala on top of the sickness I have. It's impossible. Impossible. However you say it, it's impossible. It's just not going to happen. That being said, the quote that I just read by Michaela Cole, I think the reason why I love this quote so much is because I was afraid to be sick. I was afraid to disappear because I had so many commitments and so many people relying on me. And I took that and put it in the crown of my head. And what I realised is I have to rely on my health And in turn, I have to rely on myself to be healthy, to be able to do anything. In fact, being as sick as I have done has been very humbling because I've been horizontal, literally horizontal. I don't know how I've managed to keep a job, I say keep a contract, and be this ill. You know, there's so much things I need to share because so much has happened, and I know that a lot of people have wanted to hear my perspective on certain things. Those of you who follow me on Instagram, Toya_Washington, will be very au fait with kind of my opinions about certain things, and there's so many things I wanted to share in the moment, but the priority has been just to get better. And I received quite a few messages from fellow queens who were saying to me, Toya, thank you for teaching me how to be ill and just be ill, like if I'm unwell, and now myself to go through the healing process of getting better. And a lady that stuck out to me, she says, I was offered a role and I've been sick, and I literally went back to them and said, can I start later? And I had the confidence to do that because you're teaching me how to self-care by self-caring for yourself and doing it unapologetically. And that really touched me because I really want to I live by what I say. Do you understand? I'm never going to preach about self-care and not self-care, or not show you that I'm self-caring. You guys know how much the podcast means to me in terms of, it is my first baby. It's been an opportunity to connect with so many of you. And it's been also an opportunity for me to share my experiences and give you the blueprint to be just successful and better than me. And define what success means to you. And in doing so, I've taken it on my shoulders that every Tuesday I must come here. Every Tuesday I must come here. And even to my own detriment. Because even the last episode I recorded, I was so ill, you know, and I think to myself, I had to do that to provide context, but people were still not understanding. Stop sending me messages, asking me about the podcast, telling me you missed the podcast. There's nothing I can do about it. Do you understand? There's nothing I can do about it. And in disappearing, I saw what came of the silence. And what came from the silence is a level of selfishness that stinks. What came from it is reset, perspective, and also understanding more recently how it feels to be sick as a black woman while working. And this applies to whether you are a contractor, whether you're a perm, whether you're a temporary staff, irrespective of the role you do. Yeah? Because one thing that unites us is our black experiences as black women. It unites us because we are able to relate, because we have similar experiences, and underlining it all is that we're black women. Do you understand? So I want to be very, very clear about something. This podcast is just not for people in the corporate world. Don't ever get it twisted. I may have started in the corporate world. I'm no longer in the corporate world. This podcast is for any black woman in the working world. You just have to be working in the working world, aspiring to get in the working world. This is why this podcast has been created. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but believe me, I've learned every single lesson that was applicable to me, and still learning. And no matter how successful I am, no matter how much money I make, I'm still experiencing certain things because I am a black woman. And I'm willing to come here and be vulnerable and say, this is my experience, this is how I dealt with it, this is the success. And maybe some of you may approach things completely differently, but I'm just saying to you, I didn't get to where I am now, and in six figures, not making mistakes and not being able to learn from it. And I've been very blessed to be given an opportunity to have a platform like this, because I know a lot of people listen to this podcast. I haven't recorded for weeks, and I'm still charting. I'm still charting in the UK, charting in Africa, charting in the north of Africa, charting in the States. So no matter how much they try to ignore the platform's doing bits. And I think in where I have just disappeared and just, taken that time away from the podcast, you all have had to rely on the blueprint that I've left, in terms of if I was to die tomorrow, the legacy that I feel that I've left in my community is the blueprint, and it is the experiences, and it is the learning lessons, the teachable moments that I come here every week to provide. And I'm very aware of the amount of people that have as a result of the podcast, then gone on to purchase masterclasses. And I think something that really upsets me is there are so many masterclasses that I had started to record. There's so many things that I had planned to do. Black History Month was in October. I basically had to email everybody who had booked me and say, well, through my assistants, and just say, I'm not taking any bookings for Black History Month. And, you know, that's me walking away from work. But I was ill. I mean, how do you go from giving 100% to giving barely 10%? And that's not me. That's not me. So I'd rather just walk away from the money, walk away from the experience, walk away from being able to add to Black History Month and just get better, knowing that there's gonna be other future opportunities. I don't even know where to start. In the time that I've been away, Kwesi Kwarteng, the first Black Chancellor of the UK, was sacked after 28 days. We all know that he did not buy the Passing Your Probation Masterclass. We know that. He had no burn folder, no strategy. And he had no strategy for how he was going to, at least for the first 6 months. I don't know if they have probation periods when you're a member of parliament. I don't understand how that contractually works. But he had no strategy. And he was always going to be the first casualty because Liz Truss was very self-serving. I think Kwesi, the other issue that Kwesi has is, I think he forgets, in my opinion, that he's a black man, because he's assimilating in white spaces, he's married to a white woman, he's forgetting that you're still black. They still see the colour of your skin. You may speak like them. You may do your R's and flick your pinky finger every time you drink a cup of tea, coffee, and eat your crumpets, but you are always going to be a black man to these people. And he, to me, was always very problematic because I felt like he was so far up Liz Truss's bum that he actually didn't understand the landscape in which he was approaching and which he was hired to do. Now, should we talk about, you know, after 38 days, 39 days, he's basically sacked. Liz Truss lasts 45 days and she resigns because the pressure was mounting. The pressure was getting worse. And the reality is she was literally losing the confidence of the Tory party. And although she was the first choice, after 45 days, she was given no choice but to resign. And she goes on to 115,000 a year just because she was Prime Minister for 45 days. What does Kwesi have? Apart from able to put that on his CV. Now, he's not going to be struggling for money or anything, yeah? He was in America at the time in which he was called back by Liz Truss and told, sorry, but you've got to go. Because we all know the reason. I'm not going to get into all of that. We all know why she asked him to go. And that budget was signed off by her. So irrespective of whether he was the Chancellor, she saw the budget, she signed off in it, she agreed with him. And there's a lot of lessons to learn in that. And I learned a lot from that. You have to have your own back. You have to have your own back. At the end of the day, this all for one and one for all bullshit. It's just bullshit because that pay slip has your name on it with your employment number. Your contract has your name and has your details. It doesn't have everybody else's details. And this is why, for me, being a contractor works really well because, you know, me and my friends that are contractors, we always say we're mercenaries and you have to operate as such. Every contractor I know is a mercenary. But then even when I was a perm employee, after everything I had experienced, I had developed that mercenary approach, understanding that the workplace is effectively the survival of the fittest, and understanding how to carve out a niche and understanding how to survive is a skill. And this is why the masterclasses come into play, because I'm teaching you how to survive in the workplace and how to survive, grow, and be successful, and knowing when to move on. For me, the probation masterclass has been like one of my, like, I love all my masterclass, but it's been quite provocative because it's caused me to really think about how I pass my probation. And I have templates of certain things you need to be doing in like the first 2 weeks, the first month, the first 60 days. And I literally give you succinct things, proactive things, like things that you need to actually do, i.e. take the balls by the horn from the day one. If you're not passing your probation, if you're finding it intimidating, whatever the case is, I've got the tools. If you choose not to purchase them, that's not my business. But what I'm not going to do is entertain anyone sending me DMs asking me for my opinion. So, oh, it's not a dilemma, it's an opinion. I don't have the time. If you can't afford time to invest in yourself and your career by going on a podcast, listening to them episodes, going through the podcast, looking at the show notes, and then going on the website, that I spent thousands of pounds on this website to make it easier, to make it a great user experience. I then took the time out to scope out, record, edit, upload, and provide additional material on those masterclasses, and you can't use them. Don't come and pop up in my DMs. Don't slide in my DMs saying to me you've got a question. Your question has been answered. You're choosing not to find where the answer is. You're looking for the easy way out. And I don't really have time or respect for people who are always looking for the easy way out. Because unfortunately, as a black woman, there is no easy way. I can never sit here and tell you, I've worked in this place and it was easy. Ever. It's never easy, because you always feel like you're a moving target and you always feel like you're on the firing line. So for me, it's always been about being the best I can be in what I do to make it hard for you to try and get me out. It's always been for me about understanding the roles that people play in organisations. What are people's drivers? What's driving people to do certain things? I mean, listen, at the end of it, underlying it all, I know that race plays probably, I'd say, 85 to 90% of a lot of the issues as a black woman that I've experienced. I can't talk about everyone's experience. I can only speak from my perspective of the experiences I've had. And being unwell for the period in which I have done has been no exception, because the ferocity, the violence has heightened, because they see you as, number one, we're not allowed to be ill. Number two, we're faking it. We're strong enough. We can deal with pain. All of these very toxic, false narratives that is underpinned by racism are things that drive people to expect you to send a doctor's note when you're ill. Or when you've gone to the GP for a GP appointment, they're asking you to send a doctor's note. What the fuck is that? If I've got an appointment to see the doctor, you better believe I'm not going to send you evidence of my doctor's appointment. And if you want me to, then you can pay for that. You put it in writing to me, I'll forward it to the doctor, and you can pay the bill for that. It happened to a friend recently who had a doctor's appointment. She's a contractor, actually, funny enough. And the company in which she was contracting her services asked for proof of the GP status. That she had a GP appointment. So she rang me up. I said, this is bullshit. I says, forget that you're a contractor for a moment, yeah. I says, in what world and what universe does, just a person who has a GP appointment, do you have to prove to anybody that you have a GP appointment? They might as well call you a liar. But if we're going to talk about it from the context of your current status as a contractor, you're a contractor, babes. Whether you're inside scope or outside IR35, and my contractor will understand what I'm saying there, you don't have to prove you had a doctor's appointment. If your word is not enough, that's their business. And if you are a perm member of staff, you do not have to provide written proof of a GP appointment. No, you do not. And I would like you to find the policy where it says that. I'm yet to see an employment policy where it says you have to provide proof of GP appointments. People have GP appointments all the time. What the fuck? What the fuck is that? But as a black woman, we're always under suspicion, from my perspective and my experience, always under suspicion, and there's this heightened sense of proof. The heightened sense of proof that a white woman will never, ever, ever be asked to provide. A white woman will tell you she's stressed, and she will take sick leave and only have to provide a letter from the doctor when she has reached whatever the policy says, 7 days consecutively sick. But during those 7 days, no one's asking her for anything. But as a black woman, from day one, they're going to ask you for something. And I'm going to tell you this now. If you don't set the boundaries at work, and I mean from the perspective of understanding what your rights are, if you do not assert yourself, and I don't know why, there's this perception that when you assert yourself, you're being rude or aggressive. And the perception starts from us. We think that we owe. This owing behaviour is bullshit. You don't owe yourself the ability to self-care. We don't owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to prove. Of course we owe ourselves the ability to self-care, but we almost have to convince ourselves that we're deserving of this. When I was a lot younger, a lot more naive, I used to get anxiety if I was sick, because I could never take that sick leave in peace. What would happen is I would notify before 9 or at 9 o'clock. I would call, maybe no one will answer, I'd send an email. Then I will be asked, can you give me an update during the day? I fucking well can't, because you're ill. You see, you have to set the tone of your communications, even on its most basic level. Hi, Janice. Just to let you know, I'm unwell today. I've got a really bad cold and I think I've got a flu. Unfortunately, I don't think I will be able to log on, which also means that this is, you'll hear from me today, but I need time to recuperate. Full stop. Please, can you give me and they'll come back to you. Please, can you update me later in the day? I've reiterated to you I'm ill, so I cannot update you throughout the day. The policy states that every day of sickness I have to notify. I'm prepared to do that, but I need to be afforded the ability to recover. Full stop. And when they come with all that rubbish, when you come back, return to work, you have to. This is what I'm saying. You're signing contracts and not reading the policies that they reference. And I've spoken about this before. This is not your first time to hear this. But some of you just decide that it's not your problem until it becomes your problem. And then when it becomes your problem, you slide into my DMs, and I'm not having it no more. It's absolutely out of the question. How can somebody slide into my DMs? Toya, I listened to your podcast. I'm a massive fan. Okay, that's fine. Great. Listen to your podcast. Listen to most recent podcast. I know you're ill, but I have a work-related question. It's not a dilemma. Do you mind if I call you on Instagram? Are you fucking mad? Are you mad? Am I your friend? My friends have my number anyway, so they don't need to do that. But are you crazy? Why do you think that I should give up whatever it is I'm doing, elevate myself out of my sickbed because you've got a question? But because it's a question, you think that you don't have to email. It's not a dilemma. It's a dilemma. You don't pay me for my time. I need you to understand that recently, and we're going to get onto this later, I had a phone call from a management consultancy, and it's a contact that I have, and she wanted advice about certain things that she's experiencing in a contract. How would I deal with it? I told her my fee for this, for what you're asking me to do, is going to cost you £750. She goes, Toy, would you mind invoicing me? Can we book an appointment later on today? She paid me £750. That's how much I charge for 2 hours advice, £750. That's where I will roll over to the other side of the cold side of my pillow to give you the advice. Do you understand? So don't come up here. Because the way I look at it is, every single week, bar the last few weeks, I show up every week to give you a podcast. And even if I haven't done the last few weeks, you've got over 115 or 120 podcast episodes. So I'm doing, mass mentoring. That's what I'm doing. I don't do one-to-one mentoring. Stop asking me to do it. Because I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, and I don't have the resources to be able to put out what I do and add further things when you could benefit from the mass mentorship that is provided through the podcast and through the platform. If you can't access that, I can't help you. If you can't help yourself through the knowledge I provide, why do you think that on a one-to-one level, I don't offer that? 2 hours advice, I'm charging £750. And I only do that from company to company. I don't advise individuals. There is a service that I have for individuals when it comes to contracts. We're going to get onto that later. But when we're talking about advisory work, it starts from £750. Do you understand? That was just for advisory. If you want me to do additional work, well, you know what that is. Listen, that's how much I charge. I charge her that money. She'll put the money in my account. I gave that woman, and she's a director of a very good management consultancy. Gave her the advice. She put an appointment in my diary for December, and she just wants a quick catch up. No problem, because that's a contact there. You understand? You pay for my service. You understand? As from company to company, I only provide that service to limited companies registered with Companies House, so that if you don't pay me my money, I know where I'm going to sue you. But the thing is, my mouth don't open till the money lands. I'm a Niger Igbo babe. It's not always about money, but you know what? My time is expensive, and I'm realizing that a lot of people are wasting my time, and they're doing it because I have not provided the boundaries in which my time is accessed, and it's only accessed with certain parameters. I'm busy. You've got to understand too that because as a black woman, we don't always afford ourselves the opportunity to be ill, because we're the ones that are active. We're the ones, as black women, we know what the effort and sacrifice we have to make in our careers. I was so ill. And when I tell you I was so sick, I've gone from 93 kg to 81 kg. Go work it out. Do you understand? I was on this cold bathroom floor with my laptop doing interviews. Because where you create opportunities, you give yourself options. I don't stop. I'll be sick. I've got to do something. I have to get up out that bed. Don't play with me and don't fucking waste my time, is what I'm trying to say. If you don't afford your career the respect it deserves, don't expect me to. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm telling you that I've hit a factory reset through this sickness, and best believe I'm not even fully 100%. For me, I'm just taking every single day as it comes. All I'm going to commit to is when I feel better, I'm starting to feel a bit more like myself, I'll record. Until a point where I start feeling really who I am, then I will be back to a weekly podcast. But if you do not catch the knowledge, you miss it. And if you miss it, don't think that you can come to me on catch up, because I don't work like that. We need to start creating boundaries on different levels. My time is money. I can't get that fucking time back. I have done a lot of work. I do a lot of charity work. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that will never make it to you lot's ears, but I know I'm doing it. There's a lot of people that will testify that they've needed help. My spirit has told me, Toya, this is what you need to do. And I help you free of charge. And for those people, my spirit is open to you. But those people who willfully, deliberately, and proactively are inactive, don't come to me. I'm no one's superwoman and I don't have an escape. That's not what it is. People like Kwesi Kwarteng, I don't feel any pity for him. Absolutely none. Because if you haven't learned from what's happened in the government over the last 2.5 years, if you haven't patterned yourself, that's your problem. The thing is, he's not going to be poor and he's not going to be without a job. But what he has is immense humiliation. He's a scapegoat. You've got to understand as a black woman, depending on the role you're in, they're very happy to make you the scapegoat, the reason, the blame. Very. And every role I have had, I cover my back. And I cover the back that is covered. I keep talking about the burn folder and the feedback folder. How the fuck are you emailing me asking me, Toy, what is a burn folder and how you build a burn folder? And then you tell me, I love your podcast. You don't fucking listen to the podcast because there's bare podcasts about the burn folder. Read the bloody show notes. I even discuss how I built a burn folder. Go and listen to Closet Racist and how I used the burn folder. I've spoken about Dominic Cummings, a white man hired as chief whip in the government during COVID, and how he literally collated a burn folder, walked out the front door with a burn folder, and has been using it to whip the Conservatives. What more examples do you want? You want me to do it for you? I cannot do it for you. I didn't apply for the job for you. I didn't put you in a job. Listen, I spoke about learn, helpless, all the rest of it. Some of you need to listen to the podcast over and over again. Because you dedicate your time to gossip podcasts, you dedicate your time to gossip blogs, but you don't dedicate your time to your career. And then instead of focusing on your focus, what happens is you become resentful. And when you become resentful, you start looking at what other people have and how they had it and why they have it. And then you start creating those burner accounts to perpetuate your frustration. If you do not get a handle on your career, your manifestations, your hopes, your desires, if you don't get a handle on it, you will not see success. Success is not just for people who wake up in the morning, use the toilet to shit, clean their bum, have a shower and go to work. That's not how success is ascertained. You've got to be strategic. You've got to have a strategy. When you go to a role, why is it that you've gone to this interview and you've accepted the role? Some of you, your ears haven't been waxed for long. I know it hasn't been waxed for a long time. Not every job that's offered to me do I accept. Because I have done enough due diligence, especially in the interview, for me to start asking questions. I have the interview masterclass. I literally recorded that masterclass 2 years ago, and it's still relevant and valid to this day. But some of you won't go and listen to that. You'll pop in, come on, do Postman Pat on my DMs, come and ask me about your interview. Don't ask me. The product is there. And the real truth, is in the results. The truth is in the results. I come here, I don't spin a yarn, I don't sell you fantasy, I give you the truth. If you can't go and proactively put it into practice, I can't help you. And this podcast is not for you. I don't give a shit if anybody's upset, offended by what I don't care. Do you know why? Because we need to start being honest. A lot of you are not honest with yourselves. A lot of you need to clean that mirror and look at yourself properly. Don't look at the mirror when it's congested with bacteria. Clean the mirror and look at yourself properly. Because let me tell you something. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, sometimes I have to have a conversation with myself. Some of you are not investing time to have a conversation with yourself. And what happens is when you don't have a conversation with yourself, when you go outside, people will have a conversation with you and you're not going to fucking like what they say. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. At work, are you going to make mistakes? Absolutely. It's about how you own those mistakes, how you use them as a lessons learned, and how you keep it pushing. For some reason, as black women, and I say some reason, we know why, our mistakes are magnified, polarized, the worst. Let me help you. I've got an episode about mistakes. And I tell you, you see me, I let people know I am a human being. I tell them all the time, because when I cut, I bleed. It bleeds red. It doesn't bleed any other color. Because these people look at us like we're some type of, extraterrestrial beings. The things I've experienced where I'm contracting at the moment, I'm not actually surprised. I'm just tired and disgusted at the way white people predominantly, because I'm working in predominantly white spaces, move crazy, and they think they're really smart, and they're actually really fucking stupid, because the blueprint of the way they behave is the same. It's like they grew up, and as part of their upbringing, they were told certain things, and they were generally told this. So when they now grow up into adults and they're acted out, they're all acting the same. You see, one thing about non-black spaces is the people that are in those non-black spaces are very consistent in the way they behave. And this is why we're able to relate. Because we may not have worked in the same places, we may not be in the same field, but the experiences are the same, because we are at the end of those experiences, and at the forefront of those experiences are the people who dominate certain spaces and use the white privilege and the privileges afforded to them by class, by money, and use it as a weapon. So at some point, you're going to have to get to a point of understanding, irrespective of whether you want to participate in whatever, you're going to have to develop a strategy of being able to advocate, navigate, and survive. If you're not prepared to do it, then you're better off just not working. Because I don't know what to say to you. Rishi Sunak was the second choice. I don't know why everybody's, the first, I heard one blog said the first black man, someone said, excuse me, the first Asian man, he's not, first man of color, he's an Asian man. He's the first Asian prime minister that this country has ever seen. And you know what the irony is? When you ask the average white person or the average non-black person why they voted for Brexit, they will talk to you about immigration. And your whole prime minister is a whole Asian man. This country is fucking crazy. They're actually very mad. I've realized this country is wild, mad, and it's completely out of control. I don't know whether Jesus is coming soon, but he better send something, because we are all sending what? SOS. The ancestors know what's going on. They can see what's going on, and they know that at the end of days, if it's not coming, something's coming. A meteorite, something's coming, because this is kind of crazy to me. When I was listening to LBC, the people that go into LBC, so sometimes I can't even handle it, because I feel like some of them are in the workspaces and they have aliases they use to come on these platforms and talk shit. They'll say, oh, he's not one of us. He's not an Englishman. Go. But you know something? This country is in the UK was built on the backs of immigrants. This is what the average white person doesn't know, or doesn't want to accept or recognize. If we're all as immigrants or children of immigrants packed our bags and said, okay, let's go back, the whole economy, if they think they're in a recession now, it's not even a fucking recession, it'd be a full-on onslaught of a shutdown in this country. So let's not pretend, this country needs to open its mind up. You've got an Asian prime minister, and the way Rishi is moving with his short self, he ain't going nowhere. He's here to cause havoc. And the people that are going to pay the price is not the rich. Oh, no. Because we're talking about the richest prime minister this country has seen. We're talking about he's richer than the King of England. Yeah? So money is not his issue here. He's married to a billionaire heiress. And he is a millionaire in his own right. So who is he going to protect? The rich. He don't care about the working class, the poor, the middle class. He don't give a shit. And this is the reason why the people who are going to pay the price for his policies are people like you and me. And what tends to happen, in my opinion, is what happens in the government slowly finds its way in the workplace. I don't give a fuck what any of you say. Since Rishi Sunak has been the prime minister, even where I'm working, there has been this dark cloud. They're angry. They are angry. My friends in the public sector tell me that it's dark days. They said, Taya, and us contractors, we will talk. The permies are they're not having it any easier. Let's really be real. Because the average person in where I work is a conservative through and up and down. But they're angry because the leader of that Conservative Party wasn't chosen by the people. It was chosen by the Conservative members. And it doesn't reflect how the average man in this country feels. That, in my opinion, the UK is a very racist country. The fabric of it, everything. Even down to the jewels, the crown jewels. All racist. If you ask them how they got it, blood, sweat and tears that they inflicted on countries they don't even have any respect for. You want to be talking about how corrupt African nations are. This country taught corruption. In fact, corruption is embedded in the fabric of this society. So anything you see happening in Africa, because that's what they like to talk about Africa all the time, Africa. Let's be honest. The seed of conflict was planted by who? Should we talk about colonialism? Should we talk about it? Because if we want to talk about where the violence, the aggression, all of this started, listen, don't even get me started. Because I just can't. We also have a couple of dilemmas which I'm looking forward to getting into as well. Where do I start? Okay, let's start here. So there's a couple of things that I've been itching to share, and I'm just so blessed that I've taken my medication. I'm able to sit here in one place and just be talking, and any sudden movements I will collapse on the floor, but we move. So where I'm currently contracting at the moment, I've been here since April, I think. Initial 6-month contract. As a contractor, that's calm, innit? The initial contract 6 months, and I am doing well. I'm quite senior here, and you see my manager, yeah. And I say my manager because I need to give you context of who she is, because she's not I don't look at her as my manager. She approves my invoices and my timesheets. That's how I look at her. She's not a bad person, but my spirit has just had her bookmarked. And the reason I have her bookmark is this. She wanted the best. So when I was interviewed, there was somebody else who was interviewed, but she only had budget for one person. She went and got approval for budget for 2 of us. God's so kind, the other person that she got budget for is also a fellow black queen. So I'm here to be queening with the queens. I love it for us. Now, before I get on to the other fellow black queen, during the period of this contract, I've been doing my due diligence. Because, first and foremost, I needed to understand what this, with this contract, what are my levers? Who are my key stakeholders? Who are the problematic people in this organisation? And what role does my manager play? Is she respected? Is my manager respected? And that's really an important question. Because if she's respected, that respect will trickle down to me. And that's whether you're a contractor or a perm, is the principles are the same. Obviously, I'm speaking from my perspective as a contractor, but believe me when I tell you, it applies to a perm, temporary role. The concepts are completely the same. Don't try and differentiate it. It's the same. You're talking to somebody who used to be a perm. I used to be a temp. And now I'm a contractor. Fixed term, long term, short term, I used to do it all. So let us focus on what is focusing. Okay. So I can see that my boss likes drama, you know. She's always ready for a fight. And she said it with her own mouth. I'm always up for it. They're always up for it. Never tired. This woman is a hypochondriac as well. Listen, these are all part of their due diligence. She's a hypochondriac. Remember there's a meme and Nene Leakes is cussing out Kim Zolciak from the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And she says, Kim Zolciak has had cancer. Kim Zolciak has had a hip transplant, a life transplant, a hip transplant. Give her a wheelchair. She needs a wheelchair. You know what? I need to go and find that. Let me find it. Do you know what? I can't even post it because it will get flagged for copyright. But if you go and look for it, if you want to have a bit of a laugh, pause it and go and look for it. So, my boss, I'm going to call her Sophie. She the same. This woman is ill all the time. This woman, she has everything. Listen, I told her one time I had like my ear was aching, an earache. And it's part of, obviously, because I've not been well. She said to me, oh yeah, I'm deaf in one ear. I was like, all right. I didn't even know how to respond because I didn't know what to say. I was like, okay. She's had COVID twice. She has long COVID. She's dyslexic. Obviously, I am, but obviously I've never shared that because I don't share it with the workplace. And that's for my own personal reason. Go ahead and listen to the podcast episode about that. She has had, she broke her foot in 2 places. She hurt her ankle. She hurt her hip. She got something wrong with her chest and she got mucus on her chest. I think she got mucus on her neck. She hurt her elbow, literally. This woman doesn't go a month without a sickness. I don't know how to handle that. I don't actually know what to say. But the problem I have with her is that she's a bottleneck for me. So when I've done like a commercial paper, when I've done a commercial recommendation, whatever it is, I need to get it signed off by her because she runs the team. And if I leave tomorrow, she needs to be able to justify certain things. But because she's always sick, it's sitting in her inbox. So then what happens is you get stakeholders, internal stakeholders become frustrated because things are not coming out quick enough. And it's not because I'm not doing it. It's because of the boss. And the problem is I can't throw her under the bus. So what I do is I let them know that I've completed this and this is with Sophie for approval. That's what I do. So that they know now Toya's done what she's done. And it's also a diplomatic way of saying, don't chase me, chase Sophie. Now, a lot of these people that I work with, to be honest, apart from me and my other colleague who works now in a different team, and that's a long story, I'm the only black person. This is very much a white-dominated organisation. I don't actually... the only person that I saw was a black guy, and I had to deal with him because he was actually mad. Because, again, he was another Kwesi Kwarteng. He didn't remember he was black. And the worst part of it is, from one fellow Nigerian to another, he should have just known better, but he was acting mad. So I had to rip his arsehole out and rip him a fucking new one. Now, he remembers that when he's doing those equal opportunity form, he ticks black. He knows now, he realises that, but I didn't know that before because it was moving actually very fucking crazy. Anyway, moving on. So, what my boss, Sophie, has started doing now is she started undermining me. So, if you imagine, you know, I'm not always going to get everything right, especially when you're dealing with other people's systems and processes. So, I'm also leaning on her to kind of tell me the right process to use. So, the concept of what I'm doing is the same everywhere. Like in terms of, you know, doing a commercial risk paper, doing a commercial analysis, doing a recommendation, drafting a contract, negotiating a contract, supply management, all of that. Part and parcel of, it's general. But the process of say, getting budgetary approval, for example, is different wherever you go, irrespective of the sector. So what she will do is, and I'll give an example. This woman's on and off sick all the time. Yeah? I just expect her to be off sick. I feel like every time there's a full moon, homegirl has a cold. I just don't know. It's weird to me because everybody has different health, you know, and I'm not talking about that. But I know the difference between somebody who has long-term illnesses and somebody who's a hypochondriac. And bearing in mind that I have been, you guys know, I have period pains and migraines, and that's about it. I'm a healthy babe. But even then, I still show up to work. The last few weeks has been eye-opening for me because I've never known anything like it. And it has affected how I am at work, i.e. I had to take time off work, and I never do that. You guys know I'm there for the money, honey. And I'm there for, I like signing checks, but I just haven't been able to. So again, it's been very humbling from that perspective. But so irrespective of how ill I've been, I've still managed to meet deadlines or move deadlines so that I'm able to, And again, my boss really was shocked because I'm always at work. I'm always doing stuff. I'm always busy. So when I messaged her to tell her I was unwell, she was really worried. And I think part of it is because she's realizing that as her right hand, if I go tomorrow, she's fucked. But that didn't humble her. So recently I did a commercial strategy paper and an exit strategy paper for a particular contract. And I asked her very, very many times for their templates that they use, because I've got my own personal ones, but obviously it's not branded with their branding. So she sent it over to me, and she didn't explain certain things properly. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do what I think is the right thing to do here, because I've been doing this shit for a long time. And I did a first draft, sent it to her, and didn't hear from her for weeks. Now, if you read this, now bear in mind, they've got no examples of past one's done, because they haven't had a certain subject matter expert in their department before. So for them, they're happy to have the knowledge. So I did this commercial paper, and she looked at it, and she then come back to me weeks later, and she said, oh, it's a really good paper, brilliant, like she has nothing to add, I covered everything. I want you to explain to me that when she sent the paper back to me, she made amendments. But the amendments were repetitions of things I'd said further down in the document. But because she wanted to say something, she put it there. And in my head, I thought, babes, you ain't read this document, because what you've said here, I've said it here very clearly. This didn't happen once or twice. This happened consecutively every time I did a piece of work. And it was very undermining, because what would happen is when we get into a meeting, she would just pull something out the bag that she's never even told me before. And she would say, oh, I'm going to catch Toya unawares here, but I just want to raise. And she used to do that. And it used to really fucking annoy me, because it doesn't show collaboration, and it shows that she knows what she's doing. I'm going to catch Toya unawares. Toya doesn't know this. Oh, hopefully Toya doesn't mind if I say this, but will make me aware before the meeting, bitch. Like, what the fuck? Are you suffering also from temporary memory loss, as well as COVID, as well as tuberculosis, as well as fucking Ebola? Like, all this stuff you're suffering from, is this part of it? Because I'm really not fucking understanding. Anyway, so this was happening a few times, and I realized that this is part of that complex of control, where she feels like she has to have the last word on something, so it feels like she's doing something, because she's very aware that she's been absent. So what she would rather do is make me look a bit stupid, or catch me unawares, or make it seem like what I've done is incomplete because I didn't have access to the additional information that she's been hoarding. This was going on for four or 5 months. Then there's certain meetings that she goes to that obviously I'm not going to go to. Bearing in mind as well, I'm a contractor, but she's our head of the department. So one time her boss sent me a meeting request, because obviously her boss doesn't trust her to turn up to meetings, whatever. I turn up to this meeting, her boss says to me, Toya, I'm really sorry, this is last minute invite, I'm really glad you've joined, and I know you haven't seen the pack, so I'm just going to send the pack now, and while we're talking, please just use the opportunity to just glance through it. And hopefully, if there's any questions, if you can't answer now, then I'm happy for you to take it offline. I was like, cool. As I'm looking through this pack, this bitch, Sophie, is passing off my work as her own. She's rubbing out my name and putting her name like she drafted all this shit. There's a report that I did. So I did like a post-mortem on some of their really bad contracts. And I call it a post-mortem because that's the fuck it was, a post-mortem. And this bitch passed it off as her own, put a date that, I know the date I did that document. And I was just like, wow. So this is what this woman's been doing. All right, cool. And to be honest, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm less bothered because I'm a contractor but more aware, because as part of my due diligence is showing me the type of person she is. She doesn't really have much integrity. Because you see me, I can't use somebody else's work and pass it off as my own. I'm just not capable. Do you know why? Because if you were to examine me on the contents of that, because I didn't write it, I can't really talk about it as well as the person who wrote it. But you know what it tells me about her? She's not as confident as she makes out. She's shameless. And you see, in this life, catch shame. In this life, catch shame. Somebody who is shameless is more likely to attract shame and feel no way. And I can't operate like that from a perspective of integrity. I really can't. And also it shows me that she's one of these people that she will not give credit where it's due. And I don't fuck with that. Because part of being anyone who works for an organization, you want to know that you're doing good, right? You do. That's why we have developed and spoken about the feedback folder. You want to know you're doing a good job. How do you know you're doing a good job if you're not getting the feedback that communicates that? And it could just be, and what I'm saying here is, you're not looking for a standing ovation, because for me, I don't need that. But I like to know I'm on the right track. So if you don't tell me, my assumption is I may not be. But then I have to reassure myself that if I'm not good enough, I won't be here. So that's the reassurance I give myself. But it opened my eyes to how far, and this is my experience, white people will go to remove any type of, what's the word? To remove any type of acknowledgement of how good you are. They're willing to go as far as they can in the hope that you'll remain ignorant. You see, this is what I always say to people. Whatever is done in the dark will always come to the light. And this is why I've said it before. Don't fucking try to come for me or my businesses or my platform and try to discredit it in any type of way. Don't do it. Because the one or two people that tried it, they know they're not stupid. Because not only do I have the evidence here, but they have fully immersed and been joyful in basking in the fruits of the Toy Talks platform. So anyhow they try to deny, I'm backed up with proof. I'm not the person that you do that with. Because I've worked fucking hard. You see everything you see me with, down to my M&S knickers, I've worked hard for it. So if you try a thing, I'm coming after you. Best believe it. Don't try it. This platform was solely developed by me. Sending no one. You understand? Every piece of equipment, I use my own money. No brand sponsorship, no partnership deal, no collaboration deal, nothing. Just me, myself, and I. Literally. I'm not here to provide fantasy and all this shit. I'm not here for that. You guys know that. I give you the real. So anybody coming here to make a mockery, you know what? I cast and bind you. The ancestors will deal with you. Because you're mad. You're fucking crazy. The two people that tried it, I know they bit their tongue as they tried it. Because you benefited from this platform. So even if you think I'm whatever, I don't give a fuck. At one point, you needed this platform. Not even one point. It was multiple times you needed this motherfucking platform. Okay? You needed it. You used it. Free. But you will never be free because your heart is black. You will never be free because you didn't give credit where it was due. You will never be free. It's going to be like a bondage until you confess the truth. And that's the truth. And that applies to when people are trying to pass off work as their own. It's like they've acquired a bondage. They don't know what you went through to develop and produce this. So at some point, they're going to get called out. It's going to happen. It may not happen in front of you, but I'm promising you, it is going to come out. And let me tell you something. When I was in that meeting, they asked me certain questions, but because I developed that paper, I answered everything. Then my Sophie's boss was like, Toya, oh, I'm so happy, you were able to join. This has been a great meeting. Then I was waiting because Sophie's boss then emailed everybody with Sophie on copy with the attached documents. Sophie can't say nothing. When she got back, she couldn't say nothing to me because shame didn't allow her. Fucking mad woman. But you see, for me as a contractor, I care less because I get paid. I get paid to deliver. I delivered, and that's where it begins and ends for me. But if I was a perm, I would have a problem with that. If I was a perm, I would be... Do you know how I would have dealt with that? This document looks really familiar. I did produce something very similar for Sophie, you know. Oh, it's really interesting. Wow, okay. And I would have just made that off-the-cuff comment, moved on. And then what I would have done is when we're doing our objectives and everything, end of year review, I'll bring that document out and use the one I sent her and say, this is something I came up, you know, I developed. This is as part of my achievements of my objectives. I believe I've met this objective. See the document here. And shame the devil. You don't have to say you copied me and you didn't. You don't need to do that. They know. Thieves know when they're copied. It's called thievery. I call it professional thievery. That's what I call it. Yeah. What else is it? It's not borrowing. You didn't ask me to lend it to you. You took my name off, put your name there, and pretended that you did some work. How are you finding the time to do work when you have all these sickness, illness? Your toes got fungal nail infection. Your vagina has thrush. How do you have time? I don't understand. How are you have time to develop documents if you're suffering from something all the time? And little itty bitty me has been sick on the brink of sickness, on the brink of everything. And yet what? I still have to show up, innit? No, I don't. I'll recover, then I'll show up. How about that? So, for me, Sophie can't be trusted. You know what the wildest thing is? And this is the thing I can't stand. So, obviously, I was sick or whatever. So, I missed maybe 2 team meetings. So, by the time I came back, I was still very ill. I made it very abundantly clear to everybody, I'm not taking on the capacity of work I was doing before. I'm back because I know that, you know, there's certain things I need to do, but I'm still ill. Every conversation I was telling them I'm ill. You have to drum it in. The reason you have to drum it in is because when they see you, they feel like you're cured. No, I'm not cured. The average white woman that I've worked with, the average one I've worked with, they will be ill and they will fully utilize every sickness policy to be ill. They're not giving updates. You see them when you see them. And when they return, they have supported return. Was it not supported return? What the fuck they call that? Phase return. And they phase in. Listen, there's a lot to learn from these people. They will phase in. Phase what? In. Us? Nah, we don't do any of that. We're just so grateful to have a job. So we're happy that even though we're sick and still knocking on death's door really loud, we're just happy to have a job. And then they'll be firing emails. Return to work. Can you sign this? And everybody gonna sign. Some of you need to open your damn mouth and start advocating for yourself because these people are taking a fucking piss. And what happens is they take the piss with you and they see other fellow black women and they take the piss with them. Listen, see this sickness? I've opened my eyes. My eyes are open, but now they're permanently attached to my eyebrows open. Yeah. I don't know, like Sophie, she makes me uncomfortable. I'm not cool. You know, I'm telling you now, she really likes me. If you ask anybody, they tell you. And they come to tell me. I know she likes me. But she likes me because I'm strategic in how I play the game with her. She doesn't see me coming at all. She knows I'm good at what I do. And she knows I don't take shit. That one is for sure. She knows I don't take it. She knows. And she had to have a little glimpse of me not taking shit. But equally, the dominance in her and her white privilege means that every so often she's going to check her boundaries with me. So, October, end of contract. 6 months, isn't it? So, as I've always told you guys, throughout the whole 6 months, I was still interviewing. Me! I like interviews, you know, because the only way you're going to get good at an interview is if you keep doing them. I get my interview conversion rate from interview to offer is 95%. I've told you guys before. It's 95. And this is not hearsay. I can prove it. 95 fucking %. And I'm really proud of it. Seriously. I'm proud. You know why I'm proud? Because when you create opportunities, you give yourself what? Options. Options give you what? Leverage. And leverage equals power. Fact. Fact. I'm coming. Chill. I'm coming. So then, what tends to happen as a contractor? You don't wait until the last month to renew the contract. You start having renewable conversations beforehand. But because this fucking crazy hypochondriac is always sick, I'm sure that wasn't a priority for her. I don't give a fuck. You know why? Because I'm interviewing up and down. And for me, I've got non-negotiables. I'm a remote worker. That is non-motherfucking negotiable. I'm going to ride this remote wave, until the wheels fall off. I'm going to ride the wave until a black man or black woman is the prime minister of this country. I'm just going to give you the extent of which this remote working is remotingly working for me. I swear to God. And I'm under no illusion about the blessing that comes from being a remote worker. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like people, and I don't like people's offices. I don't like rich tea biscuits, and I'm not into this cheap chit chat. I'm not interested in it. I've gone through my career working in offices. I know that I also understand and recognize the benefit of learning from other people by being in an office. But working in an office is not good for my mental health. I'm just letting everybody know, especially in the winter, because COVID, they say we're living with COVID. We can't be. They've found 2 extra variants that no one wants to fucking talk about. Every second person I speak to on my phone has fucking COVID. So winter, you can especially not see me in an office. But generally, I don't. And I'm telling you, of all the negative things that came from COVID, the positive thing, and there's a couple, one of them is it is not a foreign concept to say I am a remote worker or expect I'm a remote worker. In fact, when you see roles now, they specifically write there, remote, hybrid, on-site. They write those things. You can't ring my phone, tell you there's an opportunity before you even take a next breath for your next sentence. Is this a remote role? No. Okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply. But they're paying, sorry, I'm not interested. Those are my non-negotiables. And the way the market is at the moment, it's a reasonable non-negotiable. People will still try a thing, but my ancestors, they are amazing. They're always showing up. So, this hypochondriac, Sophie, they waited until the 3rd hour. These times, I've already received like 4 offers for new contracts. And they offered me an extension for 3 months. I found that rude. Shall I tell you why? I'm working on a multi-million-pound project. And the delivery date is meant to be January. And it's not going to be delivered. They've already asked for extensions. They've asked for so many things. And I am the commercial contract consultant lead. And I've given my commercial recommendation. I says that the date is not going to be met. It needs to be extended. And they need to take it to whatever board member they need to go to get that signed off. Because it's not foreseeable. It's impossible, in fact. It's impossible. And actually, operationally, they've said the same. So we're all in agreement. Okay. So I want you to now explain to me, if this was my only opportunity, my only option, how is 3 months? So you've gone from 6 to 3 months. I don't think that's reasonable. I personally, for me, I know I got a friend and she does take 3 months contracts, but it starts off as 3 months. You don't renew me for 3 months. It's rude. If they renewed me up until March because the new financial year in April, fair enough. I get that because you now need to understand how much budget you've got left. But these people are doing it almost to keep me on a high jump. What do I mean by that? They feel like they're doing me, but they're doing themselves. Do you know why? Because this queen, this woman, me, I, she, her, at the end of the contract in January, I'm saying sayonara, motherfuckers. I'm serious. I'm not going to take a renewal from them again for a further 3 months. Because the question is, well, why didn't you just extend me for a further 6 months? Why did you do a further 3 months? And the reality of it is, sometimes they use these extensions, contract extensions, like a weapon. In the same way they extend probation periods like a weapon as well when you're a perm. The concepts are the same. And what happens is, when you go ahead and listen to the passing your probation masterclass and really take in what I say and are interviewing, and then you get a job offer and your probation period has been extended, you take that as opportunity and you go. Because you know that the likelihood of you being kept on past the extended probation period is 50-50. Are you going to do 50-50 with your life, career, your bills, and everything else that you have planned financially? The answer should be no, unless you know that you have this in the bag. But half the time when I have been confronted with dilemmas, or when I have had my own singular experience of a probation extension, it's blindsided. Because they use it as a weapon. Probations are supposed to be collaborative. They use it as a weapon, and they tell you that you're using it to keep you on your toes. These times, if you ask them to take their shoes off so you can see their toes, you will scream, because they've not cleaned it, no manicure, no painting, no, they have never cut their toenails for more than 6 months. You're telling me you're keeping me on my toes. Let me see your motherfucking toes. When was the last time you changed your socks and aired out them shoes about you keeping me on my motherfucking toes? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Keep me on my toes. As black women, are we not always on our toes? 10 toes all the time. We're on our toes. Always watching our back. I don't like that. So as a contractor, it's no different. That 3 months is an insult. Because what you're effectively saying is, we need you because you have the knowledge, but we don't want to give you more because we want to keep you on your toes. That's what that is. So let's see whose toes is going to get blisters. Someone's going to get fungal nail infection keeping on them motherfucking toes. Because you see, in January, when they come to me with their dirty begging bowl, because we know they wouldn't have washed that begging bowl, I'm gonna be like, I need to think about it. I'm gonna teach them a lesson, but I'm definitely not gonna extend past January. It's not gonna happen. I think it will have to be an overriding situation. Maybe I've got like an additional financial commitment that will make me take that extension past January, and that's the truth. And the way I've worked it is, I need to get through November. December is a really easy month because everybody takes everyone starts disappearing. By the time you get to 15th of December, everyone's disappeared. And if it's not because of Christmas, it's because of COVID. So something's going to give. January, everyone trickles in, and guess what? We're at the end of the month, and Toya's saying, bye, motherfuckers. Saying that, I had 4 offers for a role. So I've taken on a new contract, and it's for a period of 6 months. They tried to do for 12 months. I says, no. Because I've told you guys before, I've got commitment issues, and while a 12-month contract as a contractor is amazing because you know that you have that money contract right there. For the plans I have for the next few months, it doesn't really work out for me. So 6 months is good enough. Okay, so I've accepted 6 months. Now, that 6-month contract that I've accepted, it means I'm going to have 2 contracts running at the same time, and I can manage it. I've got no issue with it. I negotiated the contract today, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Hopefully this podcast episode hasn't gone on for too long, because I really need to talk about my contract negotiation. But if we don't have time today, then it will definitely be next week, because that contract was interesting. Anyway, hopefully we have time. Anyway, can you see what I mean when I say you need to create opportunities for yourself? Some of you have been in a role for 10 years, ain't had an interview for 10 years, and you're doing yourself, because when it's time for redundancy, your name is going to be in the list. It doesn't matter whether you're a contractor, a perm, temp, whatever. You need to be understanding what's going on in your industries. You have to, because you have a vested interest, because you are in it. You need to know what's going on. You need to. And I'm not necessarily saying interview every week. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes I get bored. A bitch gets bored. And I just talk to my contacts. That's what I do. I just, hey, how are you? Because I'm not really a networking girl. Like, I've told you guys, I don't network. But I network in my own way. Not in the conventional way that you will go to these, like, networking events. I hate shit like that. I know it works for some of you, and that's great. But for me and my personality and the way it's built up, I'm an ambivert. I can't handle that. But the way I network is I really water the relationships that I've built and fostered over the last few years. So it means that every time I update my CV, I send it out to everyone. I will get a call. I periodically like call what's going on in the market, and sometimes it's not about what roles are around, it's what's going on in the market. And what I've tend to find is, because I've developed those relationships, there's certain roles that are very niche, and I get them. I get the interview, I get the foot in the door, I get the conversation. And I've developed a nice little Rolodex, I'm not going to lie. And also as well, I would say my ancestors have really shown up for me. And they always do, but in a way that I'm just so grateful for, because, okay, fine, I'm a subject matter expert, I'm good at what I do, but I don't know everything. And I really try my best, and I really am passionate about what I do. And sometimes I do get bored of my career, I'm not even going to lie. Sometimes I'm like, what the fuck? You know? And there was a period of time where I'd take 6 months off and 3 months off, and I haven't done it since COVID, and I will be doing that soon, where I'm just going to take a period of time off, like save a certain amount of money and just take time off. And I am planning to do it next year. I'm going to take like a substantial amount of time off, and I'm going to tell them I'm on sabbatical. These white people have created all these lingo and grammatical grammar. I'll use it, pick up one little course like this, do the course that won't take me long, mind my business. Or just tell them, listen, since COVID, I've not taken any time off. I've saved a lot of money, haven't been on holiday. I've just decided I'm going to take it. I'm going to have a career break. Yeah. And just travel or do whatever. That's what I'm going to do. Because I just kind of feel like, you know, sometimes as well, I do definitely advocate for taking time out of your career if you can afford to do so. Because I feel like sometimes you just need to recollaborate and just make sure like you're in the right headspace. Mental health is massive, especially in careers and jobs. And as Black women, we go through so much. And part of self-care sometimes is stepping away and, you know, reassuring yourself that you want to go back in. It's about having a plan. It's about manifesting your career objectives, your life objectives, and being able to have an objective for the year. And it's not these New Year's fucking resolutions. They're fucking shit. Where are all your New Year's resolutions now? But if I was to ask you about your manifestation boards, you can tell me where you are with certain things. You understand? Having a vision board is an accountability in a way that's actually quite gentle. I feel like when you have New Year's resolutions, they're quite harsh, but I feel like vision boards are different and they operate in a different way. And we have a podcast episode where I get into all of that. But I say this to say that, you know, I'm never going to leave my career in the hands of anybody other than myself. You want to renew me for 3 months knowing that this project's going to go on for longer than that? Fair enough. But don't expect me to accept it. And this is the thing. How long are you going to accept crumbs before you know you deserve the loaf? How long are you going to accept crumbs before you know that you deserve the loaf? And you see me, I don't like crumbs because I used to be a fat babe. But when I was a fat babe, I want the whole loaf. So I can't take crumbs. And the worst part of it is, as Black women, some of us don't know what we deserve. So we're happy with crumbs. We're grateful for crumbs. That grateful, subservient attitude that our parents passed on to us. We need to start doing away with these generational curses and start defining what we want to happen. You know, I had a conversation with Kay last week and we were just talking about something. And he randomly just said to me, but Toya, you do realise that a lot of it is because you don't give a fuck. I said, pardon? He's like, you don't give a fuck. I was like, what do you mean I don't give a fuck? Of course I give a fuck. He goes, you care about certain things. But your attitude is, I don't give a fuck. And what happens is, because you have that attitude, people understand that you're not here to beg for nothing. And that in itself is a gift. And funny enough, because I was in Kay's office when we had this conversation, Kay's got, like, if you know anything about my husband, he loves reading. Kay, you see what? Listen, we've got no more space for books in this house. And he has a book that I bought, and I don't know how it ended up in his bookshelf, and it's called The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I have read half of that book, and I'm actually going to start reading that again. I'm going to get into my book reading as well, because I feel like I've slacked with that, and I do really love reading, and I think TikTok has just taken over my life right now. But I do think we invest in that book, because when I did read part of that book, it was actually really good. But I'm actually going to start reading it again, because the art of not giving a fuck, in my opinion, is that if you're best in class at what you do, you have at least a developed confidence. And remember, confidence develops over time. You don't just wake up with confidence. I feel like you get confidence out of the quick wins of life. And the quick wins of life is, not, for example, being able to position yourself for success. Whatever success looks like for you, define what success means for you. And I've always said that. And the reason I say that is because once you define what success is, the path is clearer. And you acknowledge the quick wins to that success. And I guess for me, the way I have approached certain things is I don't give a fuck. I have actually done that. And when I took the time to really think about it, I think it's because I've gone through so much trauma. I have had these experiences that have been all-consuming. I think also as well is I've paid into this system. The amount that I get fucking taxed is a joke. My accountant is disgusted with how much I get taxed. And I said, rest, relax. A new financial year is coming and HMRC are going to give me rebate. Fat off rebate. This country takes the motherfucking piss. So I have to not give a fuck about certain things. I don't care that Sophie is using my work and passing it off as her own. Do you know why I don't care? Because I'm sending in my invoices and timesheets, you're approving them and I'm getting paid. I don't give a fuck. But what I do give a fuck about is understanding your character and how I have to interact with you strategically to be able to get to the end of my contract. Because at the end of the day, irrespective of what I say and think, I'm still gaining experience. I'm still gaining knowledge and I'm still navigating. And my win is that, okay, the contract's only renewed for 3 months, but at least it's a contract renewal. Do you understand what I'm saying? At least I'm getting renewed. And because I treat myself like a business, I can have... Listen, one of my friends has got 4 contracts running at the same time. That's why that motherfucking piece of shit that came to my DMs to tell me that, I must be the primary breadwinner and I need to talk about that and all this shit. I was like, fucking shut up. I run a business. People need my services and they're going to fucking pay for it. So if I'm charging one client $3,000 a week and I'm charging another client 1,500 a day and another client, that is bucks and it's money. Don't get into my business. You understand? Even when I was a perm, I got to a point of operating like a business. I got to that point where I understood that things were transactional. I'm giving you a service because I'm here to do a job. Yeah? And I get paid for that job. That's transactional. Everything else, yeah, is just top-ins. All of this going out for drinks, we've spoken about, that's bullshit. I'm not interested in that. Some of you feel like you need to go to these drinks because you are then progressing. As a black woman, the rules are different for us. I'm sorry. You can't operate like a black man in the workplace because it doesn't work in the same way. The strategy as black women that we have to have requires us to really think about certain things, and that is fucking exhausting. But the reality is, if you're going to survive in non-black female dominated spaces, you better have a strategy and you better have a plan, because nobody wants to be like Kwasi Kwarteng. Nobody wants to be like him. And when I say no one wants to be like him, it's not necessarily just working 38 days. It's the shame of being the scapegoat, being humiliated. You did a budget that was signed off by your boss. Then she used you as a scapegoat to hang her hat on. No one wants to fucking be him. And then his resignation letter, it was just embarrassing. I was like, you know, you and Liz, are you guys, what's going on here? And let me leave it there. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So, let's get into... Toya, what are we going to get into quickly? Let's get into the contract. Because I think I've got a bit of time. And then I'll get into the dilemmas and then we'll draw this episode to a close. So, I've been sick, I told you. You guys must be sick of hearing me say I'm sick, but I have to drum it in. Inside! Just because you hear me now, I am drugged up. No, I'm joking. I took my medication and my medication was actually changed on Thursday by my doctor and I'm so grateful. It seems to be like balancing me out a little bit, which I feel very grateful for. So, like I said, I've taken on another contract and I don't know what to expect, okay? I had the interview about 2-3 weeks ago. And when I had this interview, I wasn't that impressed. Now, I'd already been warned. So an agency, and it's like a boutique agency, and I've been on their books for, I'd say since the start of the year. And every time they bring a role to me, either I can't do it, I'm busy, or it's not the right role. And one thing I love about the two people that I work with is they really understand my CV, they really understand me, and I tell them and they know I'm a straight shooter. So I think they respect that because they know I'm not going to mess them around. And I think this is the thing when you're dealing with agencies and agents, irrespective of the agency, I think you have to develop a rapport, whether you're going for contracting roles or perm roles. And I believe the rapport should be the basis of that rapport should be just upfront honesty. Because if I tell you I'm not going to accept a role, you can spend 10 minutes trying to convince me. If I tell you I'm not taking it. And you may not like it, but you'll come to respect it because I'm telling you now, you'd rather me be honest now than down the line leave after 2 weeks because it don't make you look good. You're not going to get your fee. And these are things I say. You understand? I'm not just thinking it in my head. I say it because some of these agents, they need perspective because they have been with a client. They have had somebody who will leave after 2 weeks. And then you have to remind them of whatever they went through at that time to try and pacify the client because they didn't listen to the person that was supposed to go into that role. Do you understand? And I know some people find it hard to say no, but you see, when it comes to me, I will say no all day. No. I will say no all day. And the thing is as well, I'm not desperate. And you know why I'm not desperate? Because I create opportunities for myself. You see, you're desperate when you get caught unawares and now you're finding a way to do a patch-up job. And that's never going to be me. I'm sorry, it ain't going to be me. Because I know what it feels like to be on my knees and... Okay, but perspective. I know what it feels like to just feel like caught between a rock and a hard place and feel so desperate and take a role that I know is no good and then hate myself and be depressed and go through this wheel of depression. I know how that feels. And I've taken on very earlier on in my contracting career is taking on roles just because it's a contract role and it pays. And those have been my worst jobs. And I've just always said to myself, if I do not want a role, I'm not going to accept it. I may not necessarily be impressed about a role. And then it's for me to, if I'm interested or there's something there, to either seek reassurance or reaffirm certain things and then make an informed decision. So this particular role, the agent said to me, Toya, I've got this role, And he previously sent me for a different role with a different company. And I just didn't like, I didn't like that company, and I didn't like the new manager that was going in because he was an ex-contractor. So he had an axe to grind, starting asking me dumb questions about my first ever role I had at PwC. Why the fuck are you asking me a role that I've had more than 10 years ago? Who the fuck cares about that? You're not going to get a reference for 10 years ago. Motherfucker, fuck off. So when he told me about that role, I was like, I'm not interested because clearly he's angry because he's now become a perm member of staff. I'm coming in as a contractor and he feels hard done by, even though these were his choices. I said, I'm not here to apologise for being a contractor. So I said, I'm not interested in that. So then he called me up a few weeks after and he's like, Toya, I've got this role. This is a role for you. So he told me a little bit about it. I was like, yeah, put me forward. I don't mind. Let's see what happens. Within a week, he rang me. He says, Toya, they really want to talk to you. Like, they want to talk to you today. And I was like, it's not going to happen. So we agreed a day. And I said, listen, what is the basis of this role? He goes, okay, this is how much they're paying. And the money's actually really good. And then we're not even, when I hear the money, I was like, okay. But it's more than just the money, because who wants to be working in a fucking toxic environment because of the money? The money ain't gonna, I'll just end up using the money for therapy. That's how I look at it. So I said, he goes, it's fully remote basis because he knows that's one of my non-negotiables. And apparently I have to use all my own equipment, which is fine. I have bought equipment through my limited company in case I'm working on an assignment that requires me to have my own equipment, which is fine. So he was like, they're based in London, Dubai and somewhere else. And they're looking for someone with your skill set, etc., etc. So end up going to the interview. There's two people in the interview panel, one man, one woman. And I'd already been prepped about the guy. Apparently, he's new to this industry, but he's really smart. He's really liked within the organisation. It's his first interview, but he's very structured. And if you deviate from that structure, he can't handle it. So I was like, that's not my problem. The woman is based in Dubai, and obviously there's a time difference and whatnot. All right, cool. So I had the interview now, and there were certain things they said. So the guy was saying to me that there's going to be stakeholder hand-holding because they're going through a contractual transformation. And what that basically means is they're building in a bit more resilience, and they're transforming the way in which they do commercial contract management, and they're trying to make their stakeholders a bit more commercial. There's going to be hand-holding on legacy contracts to get certain information out of them so that I can then do what I do in terms of commercial contract management. So I says to them, so what does hand-holding mean? Because I said to them, I'm not being rude or anything like that, but I'm senior enough to sit here and say to you that I don't have time to do the admin that sits behind that. And I know there's admin that sits behind that, and I'm too senior for that. So maybe you need someone who's a little bit junior, but that's not me. And for the rate that you're paying, I said, I'm just going to get bored. I told them. So he was like, okay, let me rephrase it. So he rephrased, and I thought, no, that sounds good. So I made notes, and I told them I was making notes. So the woman, she was really honest, and she says that she has no contract or commercial acumen. She needs help with understanding contracts, so understanding where the risk sits and things like that, and she like recommendations and things like that, and building resilience in their legacy contracts. I was like, oh, that cool, makes sense, not a problem. Then she says to me, Toy, can I ask you a question? I was like, yeah, of course. She says, why did you decide to be a contractor as opposed to a perm? Right, so my alarm bells are ringing because that's a motherfucking dumb question. That's a dumb motherfucking question, okay? It's a redundant question. It has no bearing on the interview. But what it tells me is she may or may not have a chip on her shoulder about contractors. See, can you see how I'm going through the due diligence here? Hello? There's an episode called Due Diligence. Can you see how we're doing, what do you call it, transferable podcast? Can you hear? Okay, cool. So I said to her, I've made a living out of being a career contractor because it serves me. I said, I don't want the commitment of being a perm, because with that comes the investment, often emotional investment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I the way I compare being a contractor like a rock star, and you go somewhere, you use your knowledge, you transfer your knowledge, you shine a light on certain things that maybe have not been recognised within an organisation. And for me personally, I don't like the politics that comes from being a perm. And also as well, I can't commit like that. I can't commit to a perm role. I comparing it to a rock star is probably the best way to say it, because for me personally, that level of commitment, the only commitment I can give is to my husband. Outside of my husband, I can't commit. And she was laughing. And she goes, well, I guess it's good and bad on both sides. I says, maybe, but for me, I can only talk about as a contractor. And as a contractor, not only do we take risks, because, at the end of the day, irrespective of how much money one makes as a contractor, you still have to pay your taxes, you still have to do all these things, you still have to be insured, all these things. So there's a level of risk there. But for me, I've been a contractor for a really long time, that the idea of being perm, to be honest, gives me anxiety. That's what I said. I don't care. The art of not giving a fuck. But I say it in a very professional way, because you've asked me this, and I'm being honest. And I'm doing it in such a way that it's also quite light, but underneath it all, what I'm saying is, if you've got a problem with me being a contractor, be a contractor, no one's stopping you. Asking me that question is redundant, because all that tells me is you may have a chip on your shoulder. And one thing about me at the moment, clearly I've lost weight because I'm not eating. I don't want to eat no chips. I don't want to have to service the chip on your shoulder. It's not my job. I don't have the time. So after the interview ended, it was like an hour. They asked me a few competency-based questions. And I just thought, what the fuck? Like, you've got my CV. It's just weird. So what happened is I pulled out my CV. Yeah. I pulled out my CV and my notes. The art of not giving a fuck is being confident enough in yourself that since you're interviewing me, I will interview you. And I asked them a lot of questions. You know when you're asking good questions, oh, that's a really good question. Oh, I never thought of that. Interesting question. Yeah, I asked them. So a day or two later, I get a call from my contact at the agency, and he says, Toya, they were really, really impressed with you. They really liked you. I was like, all right. And he goes, all right. I was like, yeah. Because I thought you'd be really excited. I said, why would I be excited? I says, listen, they called me for an interview. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I says, and it's not about confidence or anything like that. It's not my first time at the radio. I know what I've done in the past. I understand what their requirement is. Now it's about fit. That's what this is about now. He says, Toya, they want to offer you the role. I was like, I don't know. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? I says, I don't know. I said, I haven't decided whether this is the right fit. I don't know. I need a couple of days to think about it. So I took a couple of days, thought about it, and they had another contractor in that role, but he is the head of procurement transformation, and he's contracted his limited company directly with them. And then the agency had him call me. Well, actually, they sent an email and said that we should talk. So he called me. At the time, I didn't know that he was a contractor. So he rang me. He says, hi, Toya. And he explained who he is. And he says, I gave the recommendation that they should interview you. He goes, listen, I'm very senior here. This is what I do. And I want you to join my team. I said, I'm confused. Are you not all in one team? He says, yes and no. So I says, all right, from contractor to contractor, talk to me. And he did. And he was honest. That's one thing is, you know when someone's being honest, but especially as a contractor, you just know. Just really honest. I says, let me tell you something. I don't have time for stakeholder hand-holding. I'm not being rude when I say this, but for where I am in my career, that is beneath me now. Because what you're now doing is you're now causing boredom. And when I get bored, I get mischievous. So for me, I need something that's going to continue to elevate my career. Put it this way, you rung me because you've seen the trajectory of my career. You've also seen the projects I've worked on. They're not fly-by-night projects. Like, we're talking about multi-million pound projects, and some of them are very controversial. Some of the projects I've worked on are classified because I've signed an NDA with some of these businesses. So let's not tell me about stakeholder management. I don't do it, you know, and I'm not willing to do the admin that sits behind it. And he goes, absolutely not. So I said, this is what was said at interview. He goes, no. He goes, leave that with me. I said, okay, cool. Then I said to him, this whole time difference business, I just want to let you know, I work 9 to 5. The only time I'll work until 6, if there's a project and I have a deadline, it is an exception, it's not the rule. So this time difference thing, how can I support somebody who's on a different time zone than me? How's that going to work? But unless you want me to burn the candle. And to be honest, I've got no candles left since COVID. Since the beginning of lockdown, I've got no more candles. And he was dying. He kept laughing. And I goes, listen, I'm straightforward. With me, what you see is always going to be what you get with me. And I will never take a role that I cannot fulfill. Secondly, I'm not willing to use my expertise and have it go to waste because somebody really likes what's on my CV but doesn't actually understand what I bring to the table. And he goes, Toya, I understand your commercial acumen and what you bring to the table because I asked them to interview you. In fact, what should have happened is I should either interview you first or join that panel because I don't actually like what's being communicated. He goes, what do you need to be able to start the role? I said, okay, I need assurance in writing about this stakeholder hand-holding because I don't do it. Yeah? Secondly, you need to up the rate. The rate is good. I'm not going to lie to you. The rate is good. But I'm working with somebody who's on a different time zone. So I'm going to have to factor that into my work. So that's like an additional £250 on top of the rate. Cheeky, but it's a reality. I said, thirdly, I need to limit meetings. I don't like meeting heavy roles. That's not going to work for me. You have to also allow me to execute. If I'm in a meeting every 5 minutes, it's not going to work. So if this is part of micromanagement, this role's not going to work. Now, the reason I said that is because I've got another contract. I can't have a meeting heavy role, can I? He goes, Toy, leave it with me. 24 hours later, he rang me. He's like, Toy, I've just sent you an email. I've confirmed everything in writing. Everything you've requested, I've done. Are you willing to do this transformation project with me? I was like, yeah, cool. Let me see your contract. He says, no problem. Toya, can't wait to work with you. He goes, the agent said I was very straightforward. And he goes, I can see that, but also I can see the integrity that sits behind that, and I respect it. That's what he said to me. So, I get an email from the agent. Hi, Toya. I've spoken to XYZ, and he told me about your conversation. He said that you're happy to proceed on the following basis. So I'm going to have the contract drawn up, because remember, they have to contract through my limited company, so they have to do the contract through my company to proceed. So then he goes, just want to confirm the basis of the offer for this consulting role. And one of the things he said is that the role is remote, with the exception of specific meetings happening in the office. I wrote back to him. I said, absolutely not. I said, the interview was taken on the basis that this is a remote role, and the role will be accepted as such. If it is not remote, unfortunately, it's not going to work for me. He come back, he goes, understood, clarified. Because at any one time, these people, you know what it is? They expect you to be so damn grateful that you're going to accept any terms they give you. And that's not going to work. But you know why that was a red flag for me? Because it tells me that either you've forgot one or you're trying to pull one over on me. And the average person, as far as I'm concerned, in business, is trying to pull one over on me. So I'm not having that. So I knew that I'm going to have to pay special attention to this contract when it comes over. So I received the contract today, and I want to go through a couple of things. Now, the reason I'm saying this is, yes, I'm a contractor, but it applies to your contract of employment, because effectively it's the same thing. They're contracting my services through my limited company, but your contract as a perm is your employment contract. Some of you do not read it. Some of you refuse to have a look at it until there's a problem. And some of you think that the only way you can read your employment contract is if you're a lawyer, and that's bullshit. I am not a lawyer. Okay, I am part qualified. I didn't want to fully qualify. That was my reasons, and I'm doing really well. So I understand that I have there is a privilege in being able to study what I have done to get to where I am, and also the profession I'm in, because the profession I'm in is I am a subject matter expert when it comes to contracts. I manage multi-million-pound contracts, and I've got my law degree, went to law school, you know, all the rest of it. You guys know it, right? So obviously the way I see contracts is a completely different way. Do you understand? I see it differently. But there are basic things that you don't have to be a contractual whiz to understand. Now, again, because I've been sick, I've been unable to do certain things. And one of the things I really wanted to do is do like a masterclass on employment contracts. Or just, and when I say employment contracts, not just employment contracts, but contracts that affect you also as a contractor. Things to look out for, because the concepts of contracts are the same. They don't change. And there are certain red flags that you need to have understanding of from the interview. And this is why I tell you to do your due diligence, because if you do it from an interview perspective, looking at your employment contract will be easier, because you now also know things that you have to look out for. But there are certain key things about contracts that you will come to appreciate just as part and parcel of being an employee or a contractor. So I'm going to read my email that I sent. So when I got the contract, I reviewed it. Now, I also want you to bear in mind that a tactic of contracts is, I'm supposed to start this new assignment tomorrow. This role was offered to me about 3 weeks ago now. Why am I only receiving the contract today? Because it's a ploy to pressure you into not looking at the contract properly, but instead signing it and signing away your rights. And what happens is then you get into the course of that role, and then something happens, they'll be like, oh, but you signed your contract, oh, but you accepted it, oh. I don't give a shit. If you want to send me the contract in the third hour, if it takes me 24 hours to look at that contract, so be it. And I will not start until both parties sign that contract. Period. So when I got that contract today, because I called the agent, I was like, where is this contract? Because also as well, I had carved out time to look at the contract from Thursday. But I was like, all right, cool. You send me the contract today, no problem. So I reviewed that contract. So first and foremost, I said, hi Simon, thank you for sending me the contract today. And the reason I said that is because you sent it today. for the role to start tomorrow. So it's that underlying thing of letting you know that you sent it today, and if it takes longer to negotiate, that's what it does. I said, I've reviewed the contract and have the following points to raise, and these need to be reflected in the contract in order for it to be duly signed. The first, the recitals. So in a contract, you have 2 parties, or 3 parties, 4 parties, however many parties there are. And you have to make sure that the parties are who they are. So for example, they put my name. You're not contracting me, you're contracting my limited company. And I have 2 limited companies. One limited company for certain things and another company for other things, because I know people are too fast. I don't need people to know how much money I make, and that's the gospel truth. So one company is like known, like you can find it. The other company, you need me to tell you that it's mine, because you can't say my name there. Okay? And then you have a bit in a contract called a recital. And what a recital is, it basically tells you the premise of the contract, right? The purpose of the contract. So, recital A, I do not offer procurement services. Nothing within my CV relates to procurement services as an offering. I offer commercial and commercial contract management services, which may also include supply management services, and business consultancy is wrapped underneath all of that. This recital needs to therefore be amended to remove procurement services and instead reflect as I have mentioned above. Now, the reason why I was really clear on that is, number one, I don't do procurement. And big shout out to all my procurement people, because I know a lot of procurement people, but I really hate procurement. I find it boring. I find it laborious. I understand why we need procurement, but I hate it. The reason I have done my SIPS level 4 is because I needed to understand the procurement process in order to better understand how to manage and fully do the commercials of a contract. Do you understand? I didn't study it to do procurement, because I find it very, very, very boring. I hate it. There's only a few people that I know that can do both. Usually people lean between commercial contract management and procurement. Procurement is a lot more popular than commercial contract management. I think it's still, commercial contract management is also quite seen as still quite a development, still quite a niche. It's not a lot of people that I know that do it. It's a small number of us that do it. And to be fair, they're very different. And the reason why I had to point that out is I don't want to go to this contract and they're telling me to do procurement, because we're going to have a problem, because I'm not going to do it. But if I sign this contract with that in there, then I've committed myself and my business to do it. So, Number 2, my company name is XYZ Limited. There was a name change that took place at XYZ date, and this is of course reflected on Companies House. All you would need to do is use my company number, type this in, and you will be able to see that information. Can you also look at my insurance documents, which also clearly reflects my limited company name? As it currently stands, this incorrect company name that you have placed in this contractual document puts my business at risk if I am to sign this contract, because it's not covered by my insurance policy. That's self-explanatory. You can't assume that the person writing the contract knows what they're writing. The average person in HR or the average person in an agency doesn't even understand the contract. They are just using a sample template and plugging things in. So you need to read it and make sure the information is accurate. That is part of due diligence. Restrictive covenants. Clause 11.1 is too restrictive and directly goes against being a contractor via my limited company operating outside of scope and outside of IR35. My limited company is not an employee of your agency. I'm contracting my services through your agency via my limited company. As the restrictive covenants within this contract currently reads, it effectively prohibits my company from taking on any other client or taking on any other client consultancy for a period of 6 months following termination of this contract without prior permission from your agency. This clause is unacceptable and should either be reworded or removed, and I'm happy to provide you with suggested wording. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of a restrictive covenant, but if you don't know what a restrictive covenant is, you know what the word restrictive means. It's to stop you from doing something. So within this contract, they put a restrictive covenant that basically says, I'm not allowed to take on any other client, full stop. And once I've terminated the contract, or the other party has terminated the contract, I can't work with any other management consultancy without getting prior permission from this agency. What the fuck? Are you crazy? Are you actually losing your motherfucking mind? The whole idea of being a contractor is I can have 20 contracts. It's none of your fucking business. Because you're not employing me and you're not employing my business. You're contracting the services of Toya through my limited company. My limited company employs me. You don't employ me. Secondly, why have you got a restrictive covenant that basically says, if the contract is terminated for 6 months, I'm not allowed to work with anyone else in the field unless you give me permission? It directly contravenes IR35. The whole idea of IR35 is you should be able to be free to take on any other client. I'm not employed by you. Now, what you would find in a perm employment contract is, it is a restrictive covenant, but it may come under the header of a non-compete clause. So a non-compete clause that basically says if you were to leave, you're not allowed to poach any staff. It may say that you can't work for a competitor for a period of 3 months. That's how it may come out in a perm contract. Now, they may not call it a restrictive covenant, but by its nature, it's restrictive because it's stopping you from operating how you would have worked but for that contract. So if that contract never existed, you would still be able to. You understand? The fact that they're telling you what you can't do is restrictive, and that is a restrictive covenant. Now, this is what I'm going to say. I don't know if you remember a while back, I had a dilemma come through on TikTok, which was really, really interesting. And basically, the guy was trying to leave a role, and the role he was trying to leave, they were basically saying to him, he's not allowed to work for a competitor for 6 months. And that's you can't do that. How can you say you can't work for a competitor for 6 months? So he had already signed the contract, and he said that, so I advised him, and basically we said, you can't really do that unless you're willing to pay me for 6 months, because effectively what you're doing is you're restricting my ability to earn. Now, bearing in mind, he shouldn't have signed the contract as it was. He should have renegotiated it, but he didn't know. So what we said is, you've got a garden leave clause within your contract. Put me on garden leave so that if you think I'm going to take your stuff or whatever you think I'm going to do, I'm on garden leave, and you pay me for the garden leave, and I am able to work for a competitor as long as I do not share any business intelligence that relates to this organisation. They agreed. You see, a lot of these people, they use these big words and they try to stop you from progressing if it's not with them, and it don't work like that. So, 4th point, schedule. So, whenever you've got a contract and they refer to a document, a policy, or a schedule, you need to see it before you sign the contract, because when you sign the contract, you're accepting the policy, the schedule, and anything that they refer to. You have to have it as part of that contract. You have to see it. How can you sign a contract without seeing what they're referring to if the reference isn't to the document that you're looking at? So they were referring to a schedule. Luckily, they had the schedule there. When I looked at the schedule and it had location, this role was offered on a remote basis, and this was clarified in writing on the 18th of October. Any reference to hybrid and or office-based work must be removed and replaced with remote, 100% remote. This role is accepted on a remote basis only, and this is non-negotiable. See how they tried to slip it in? But I knew this was going to happen. Why? Because when I had the confirmation email, they had there that it's remote. However, there'll be specific meetings in the office. Fuck off. If we was on lockdown, them specific meetings would be remote. So let's pretend we're in lockdown, innit? So schedule, again, a reference to the schedule. Experience, training and qualification. They had me as M6 qualified. I'm not M6 qualified because I'm not a procurement professional. The information here is incorrect. I'm not M6 qualified and I have never communicated. This has never been communicated by me, nor is this contained within my CV. Therefore, this needs to be amended as follows. I am qualified in the following: LLB Honours Law Degree, Legal Practice Course, Masters in Law, and CIPS, so SIPS Level 4 qualified. Please note, I cannot commence this assignment at risk and therefore shall only commence this assignment when this contract has been signed by both parties. Kind regards. Within 10 minutes of receiving this email, everything I asked them to do and amend, they did it. Everything. I didn't negotiate a damn thing. I was ready for them. That goes to show me that they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. And what I'm going to do is use this contract and the contract that I helped the guy that came through with the dilemma on TikTok. And I'm going to use that as live examples to teach you all through a masterclass how to deal with contracts, both from a perm perspective, temp perspective, and from a contractor perspective as a contractor. Because I feel like these are things they didn't teach us in school that they should have done. Because the whole idea with school is that they teach you how to get a job, but you got to sign a contract. They don't teach you those things. That is crazy to me. So for me, understanding contracts should be a life skill, because you sign a contract when you're renting a house, when you're buying a house. You sign a contract when you're getting a phone. You sign a contract when you're taking a loan out. You sign a contract on so many things. And not everybody has access to the means to be able to afford a lawyer. And the reality is a lawyer is going to inflate their prices, use all this massive language to be able to justify how much they're charging you. When the very basics you could know and understand yourself. And the things and the words that you may not understand, like the buzzwords they use to intimidate you, you could Google those buzzwords. But I think for me, how I feel that I can help my fellow queens is by doing a masterclass on contracts. And I'd always planned to do it, but I've been sick. So it's definitely something I'm going to do, because I think you're all going to benefit from it in a way that you will now start looking quite retrospectively on things that you've signed and think, shit, like I understand what that means. Or, oh my God, this is very obvious. Do you understand? Now, I understand, again, that I have the privilege of having studied this, work in this field for almost 10 years now. But I genuinely believe that there's basic things that you should know. For example, Kay gets a Toya Talks every day. And he understands contracts really well now. Kay works in finance. He doesn't deal with contracts. But he does deal with it from a life perspective. So he looks at contracts now a little bit differently. And I've kind of used him as the example of, you know, somebody who maybe not come from a contract management or understand contract background. Am I able to explain it so he understands? And he does. And I think the beauty of this is we talk about life skills. So swimming is a life skill, for example. People say cooking is a life skill, but understanding contracts is a life skill as well. So what I've just done there is just give you an example of a couple of points and kind of the things behind it. And I didn't have to negotiate because everything I said was clear. Like, I'm not stupid. Do you understand what I'm saying? And even if it was a negotiation, there's things that are non-negotiable, like the restrictive covenants and the remote working. They're non-negotiable. And the other things are more admin-y stuff that could have a massive implication if they're not corrected. So you have to also understand there's an admin side of looking after your contracts and making sure that it reflects the reality of what you're walking into. So hopefully, I'm really hoping that helps and you found that informative, you know, come like masterclass, preliminary masterclass before the actual masterclass. So yeah, anyway, I want to quickly move on to the dilemmas because I feel like we're running out of time. This episode is lengthy. I don't even know how long it is, but I know it's long. Okay. Dilemma 1. Okay. This one is called Managing Multiple Contracts. Firstly, hi Toya. Hello Toya. Firstly, I'm a massive fan, so I'd like to take the opportunity to say a huge thank you for all that you do for our community. The amount of knowledge and wisdom I've gained from listening to the podcast is immeasurable. I recently had to do a 4-hour drive to and fro, and I was so excited because it meant I could catch up on your episodes. I literally binged on 8 hours worth of episodes, which means I'm all caught up. This is how much I value your podcast. Brief introduction. I'm a 27-year-old Nigerian woman working as a business intelligence consultant in the IT industry. I currently am working with a client on a 4-day week contract outside of IR35, which is fully remote. Amazing. I love this for you. That's brilliant. The role is very comfortable, non-invasive, and I have done my due diligence to understand how the company and stakeholders work. Now, that is somebody who listens to the podcast, isn't it? I find that I have spare time on my hands during my working week, and as I currently don't work on Fridays due to my 4-day week contract, I've decided I have the bandwidth to take on another contract for the short term in order to meet some of my personal savings goals. You've mentioned often in a few podcasts that you've successfully been able to have multiple contracts, and I really appreciate it if you could share some of your experiences with this. I know it won't be easy, so I'd really like to know what to expect. Dilemma summarized. How to take on multiple contracts and navigate them at the same time. What to say or not to say to recruiters when trying to secure a second contract. Is it better to stick to one at IR35 status? Your advice would be very much appreciated. I'm aware it's not so much a typical dilemma, so I understand if it doesn't make it to the podcast dilemma section. I think this would even be a masterclass in itself and would be more than happy to pay for the information if provided. Many thanks for taking the time to read this in advance. So first of all, what I will say is congratulations and well done. I think it's always amazing when you're able to find a contract role that works for you, that isn't labour intensive, but you're able to just do the job and just have peace of mind. So congratulations. Of course, this dilemma is going to make the podcast, because if you listen to this episode, it's actually quite pertinent to your questions. And I can see that you really listen to the podcast. I can see it, I feel it, I understand it. And I think it's amazing how you've done your due diligence, so you're able to now arrive at this conclusion. I'm so happy that I'm able to be transparent and share with you the ability to have multiple contracts, because to your point, it enables you to reach certain savings goals. If you've been following me for a long time, you know I've been on the property ladder for a really, really long time. And to be able to afford the house that we live in now, the house is almost £500,000. You better believe it's because I've been able to not only reach my savings goal, but be able to meet Kay where he is to be able to afford this home. Do you understand? I think also as well, it's not just about financial goals in terms of houses. It's just generally, savings goals, holiday goals, whatever your financial plans are. I feel like being able to have multiple contracts allows you to do that and get to your savings goals quicker. So I think it's always great to share that knowledge as a contractor of having multiple contracts, because up until the pandemic, I didn't know. It was only the pandemic that caused us to start taking stock, and being able to work remote is amazing for the opportunities it affords us. For me, I've been able to be sick in the comfort of my own home and just feel comfortable enough that if I do need to get something done, I can go to my laptop without having to get on the transport system, which I hate so much here in the UK. But I love it for you that you're now considering an additional contract. To your point, it's not easy, but there is an art to it, I find. First of all, you've got a role already that's outside of IR35. So what I am going to say to you is it's always important that if you already have a role, to make sure that role is not meeting intensive. If the role is meeting intensive, it's very difficult to have another role, because you're having, and that's kind of what I learned from when I had multiple roles before, is I had one role and it was so meeting heavy, it was unbelievable. So managing that with my other contract was literally like, it was, I don't know how I done it, but I learned the lesson that you have to have roles that are not meeting intensive and therefore non-evasive to be able to manage it. And you may have 1 or 2 meeting clashes, but they're easier to manage than if you're having a meeting every day, 3 or 4 meetings a day. It's impossible. So you said how to take on multiple contracts and navigate at the same time. Is it better to split your working days across different contracts? Any tips and tricks in managing meetings across both? So I've kind of said that, and I don't think you need to split them. I think you could have another role that's Monday to Friday, but the art is to find. And the thing is, how are you going to find out if a role is meeting intensive? Just ask in an interview. Is this organisation quite meeting heavy, or is there a push and a drive to work autonomously as well as collaboratively? Those are the way you answer those questions. Yeah. What to say or not to say to recruiters when trying to secure a second role? Do I disclose to them that I currently have a role or shield the truth? Or do I just pretend my current contract is coming to an end, hence why I'm applying? So for me, this is what I do. I tell you the truth. I don't need to tell you I've got another contract. I don't need to tell you that. That's not your business. Especially through my limited company. The whole idea of working outside of scope and being an independent worker outside of IR35 is that you're able to take on multiple contracts. If you are exclusive, yeah, then, you know, if you're exclusive, then either they have to pay for the premium, or are you really working outside of scope? So, for example, with the contract I just mentioned, that restrictive covenants were so restrictive, and I did say on the call to Simon when he was trying to convince me to take the role, if you want me to work in this role exclusively, there's a fee, and it's between. And the way I work it out is what I could earn on average if I had a multiple contract. So you're looking to pay between 15 to 20,000 a month for exclusivity. No one's going to want to do that. And you shouldn't want exclusivity. You need the ability within your contract to be able to have multiple contracts. So I would say, in terms of the recruiter, just don't say. If the recruiter says what happened with your last role, you just say to them, it's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. That's not a lie, because it is coming to an end. Every contract's coming to an end, though. Oh, when should it be coming to an end? Well, put it this way, I'm looking to interview now, and it's possibly a week's notice. That's not a lie, because it's true. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do not tell them that you have another contract, because you're talking to a perm person who knows how much contractors earn. They're not going to want to do that, are they? There's only one agency that I know that don't care if you've got multiple contracts, i.e. you just have that conversation, they don't care. But most of the other ones I know, just don't tell them. It's a need to know basis, and they don't need to. Why do they need to know that information? What are they going to do with it? Tell the client? No, let's not do that. Is it better to stick to one IR35 status? So, it depends. So, I had to have a conversation with my accountant about, you know, every time I take on a new contract, I always speak to my accountant anyway. And I speak to him because he knows what my financial goals are, my commitments, my investments. He knows what, like, the portfolio needs to look like. So I always talk to him about being tax efficient and how it would work. I've got friends who work inside scope and outside of scope. I feel like you're working outside of scope already. And what I am going to say to you is, it has to be about tax. The decision to take a role inside and outside has to be about tax. Now, bearing in mind, you've got an outside role already. So another way to look at it is, that outside role, just build that money and don't touch it. And then you could take an inside role where you're going to be paying tax at source, and that's the money you'll live off. And what will happen is you'll reach your financial goals quicker because you've got an outside role that you're through your limited company and you're not touching that money. And then you have to be very cognizant of the financial tax years and how much you can take out without being penalised by having a higher tax bracket. So you paying a higher tax, which is like 40% or something. You've got to be careful, and also remembering, I think there's a limit on how much dividends you could take or whatever. So I feel like taking one role inside and one role outside works really well. And then you need to talk about tax efficiency in terms of your pension and how you can reduce your corporation tax. These conversations need to be had with your accountant so that you can make an informed decision about whether you would take an additional role that's either inside or out. Now, you could take 2 outside roles, and there's not a problem with that whatsoever. But bearing in mind then, you may then have a higher tax code and have to pay a higher rate of tax, because you're going to then have to live off that money by paying yourself dividends and things like that. Is it financially savvy to have 2 outside roles? Those are the questions that you need to ask yourself. Personally, for me, based on the conversations I've had with my accountant, I think that for my circumstance, it would make sense to take 1 inside role and 1 outside role and never touch the outside role money, and understand and be cognizant of the tax year and what I'm putting through my business. Bearing in mind as well, with outside roles, as you know, you're able to do expenses and things like that to reduce your corporation tax, which is always great. I don't agree in taking 2 inside roles at all. It's not tax efficient, it's ridiculous. So it's either going to be 2 outside or more than 1 outside role, 1 outside role or 1 inside role. But again, it's tax. It's about tax at this point. Bearing in mind, if you take an inside role as well as you've got an outside role, the inside role is going to fund your life, your day to day, and your outside role is going to fund your savings goals. And then obviously, hopefully, you've got like private pensions and stuff that you pay into, and you're able to reduce your corporation tax by doing it from the money earned from your outside role. But speak to your accountant. That's what I would advise. Hopefully, that answers all your question. I hope it does, and I hope you found that really useful. And actually, it's a really, 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 really good question. And I just also want to say well done, because I always have so much respect for black women who are in the working world anyway, because it's difficult. But being a contractor as a black woman is not easy either, because we know a lot of the obstacles and a lot of the jealousy that comes from certain people we work with as well, especially people who have never contracted before, or people who have contracted and then gone perm and then are resenting you for being able to maintain your contractor status. And I think it's amazing as well that you're thinking outside the box. And you know, when you're talking about savings goals and stuff, sometimes it's about understanding how to change your circumstances so you can reach those savings goals. So congratulations, well done. And also well done to like women who have perm roles and you're able to hold on to a perm role. Because listen, holding on to a job is a skill, and I tell everybody that it's a fucking skill. So I think all of us deserve to clap for ourselves and celebrate ourselves, because in this world of work and in this society where we know how they talk and treat us, honey, it's a lot. So the next dilemma. Good evening, Toya. I've been listening to your podcast all the way from the US. I absolutely love it, and you have been a blessing, affirming some of my career and life experiences as a firstborn Ghanaian girl in the working world. I truly appreciate your candid advice about all things career. I have a bit of a dilemma or question. I recently moved into a new role after being traumatized, and I'm finding it a bit challenging to calm down and execute my role without constantly second guessing myself or feeling unsafe. I've gotten great feedback from stakeholders so far and have made some impactful suggestions to some of the projects I lead, but I still can't shake the anxiety 4 months into the role. I've done some reflection and realised that it's because I never took the time in between workplace traumas to set myself up for the best of success, to always have options. In my last role, I was berated in a meeting with 10 plus people, reported it to my manager who did nothing. He was a long time friends with the woman who yelled at me. Furthermore, I was pigeonholed into a role for an extra 10 months after my previous manager decided that I was ready to move to a new role, but I was too valuable to let go in the short term. To summarise, I overstayed with my last employer due to financial constraints, not believing in myself and feeling stuck, and lack of agency over my career. Lack of agency over my career. That is very honest. God being good, a new door has opened for me, but I'm still having PTSD. After my last experience, I promised myself that I will never be in that position ever again. I have the experience and skills to go into consulting or contracts in my industry, and I'm finishing up my master's in said field. I have the receipts, the experience, just having trouble with putting it all together and zooming in on a plan. If this makes it to the podcast as a dilemma, I guess it can cut off here, laugh out loud. All things being said, I was wondering if I could set up some time with you to get one-to-one advice on how to plan and pivot into contracting and consulting. I admire the agency you have over your career so much, and I feel like it's time for me to step into having full autonomy over my career in the chaotic world of work. Please let me know if this is possible, and if so, I am more than willing to pay for your time. Okay, so first of all, I think what we need to do is, and what you need to do is celebrate yourself for being really honest. I feel like one of the hardest things as black women that we have to do is that whole looking in the mirror, as I spoke about in this podcast episode. You'll find this episode quite useful in relation to your dilemma. But you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and be honest about where your shortcomings are as a result of the trauma that you've experienced. There are a few episodes I think that will help you, especially with like imposter syndrome and things like that. But first and foremost, I think you need to go to therapy. I think the problem that we have is, as you've said quite eloquently here, is we're going into roles with the trauma, with the baggage of the trauma that we haven't been able to work through. So I'm going to encourage you to go to therapy, because that anxiety that you feel is as a result of the trauma that you've experienced. And I think you need to be able to have a safe space to have that conversation. And I encourage therapy, and encourage you to invest in your health and your mental health by having therapy. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Secondly, I love how you have made a promise to yourself that you will never be in a situation again where someone's holding on to you for their own benefit and not for your progression and success in your career. And the fact that you have actively and proactively taken steps within your career by doing your masters and now thinking about consulting and contracting, I think that is testament to the fact that you have consciously made a proactive decision to never be in that situation again. So I just want to commend you for that, and I want to celebrate you, because that is a lot, you know, and that is those are achievements in themselves, and I want you to recognize that. How to get into contracting is actually a very interesting topic, and I'm going to be honest with you. When I first looked at your dilemma, the first thing I said was I don't actually have the time to be able to do a one-to-one session because I've just been so ill. But I will consider it, and I will have a conversation with my assistant, and I just need to see if I'm able to, because I've just been ill for so long and I had so many commitments and there's so many emails and so many things and so many people to get to. I don't know. I don't offer mentoring of any kind. I don't do it. I do group mentoring through the podcast, which I think is more than sufficient. But what you're actually asking me for is something that I haven't provided. So I haven't got a podcast or a masterclass on how to get into contracting. Maybe that's something I can develop as a result of your dilemma. But I feel like if I agree to do the one-to-one session with you, yes, it's going to be chargeable because that's my time, and I think you understand that, so that's fine. But you need to decide how to best utilize my time, because I can offer you an hour, and you have to have questions that you're going to come with. This is how you're going to fully utilize a conversation with me about how to get into contracting. And it's also going to start with you changing your CV. Your CV is going to have to be changed slightly so it reads more as you're going to go into contracting. Do you understand that there's a way you can do that? So what I will say to you is, let me have a conversation with my assistant. Let me get a real understanding about the demands over the next few months. And then I will be able to come back to you and say, this is what I can offer you. This is how much it's going to cost. And if it's something you can't afford, that's fine. You just have to wait until the masterclass comes out. And that's for me a compromise. And I'm only compromising because I know for a fact I don't have a podcast about how to get into contracting. I know I don't have a masterclass. So I haven't provided those tools to send you to. So in a way, if this is something that I know I can help you with, the only way to do it is to do a one-to-one session. But I'm all about group mentorship. So I may use that one-to-one session as a backdrop of then how to do a masterclass, if that makes sense. So Jennifer or Simone will send you an email just to tell you that this podcast is up. You have a listen to it, and we'll just take it from there. So hopefully that has helped you and that is useful. Okay, so those are the two dilemmas I wanted to address. I have other dilemmas, but they will have to wait until hopefully next week if I do an episode, or the next episode. I don't know when that's going to be. Hopefully if I have the strength to do it next week, then I will. I really hope that you found this episode really useful, and the level that, like, my candidness and I'm just bringing myself and my, like, sometimes you have to have a don't give a fuck attitude. And like I said, I feel like being ill for the time which I have done has hit the reset button. It's like factory reset, and I just feel as though in order for me to bring to the table what I want to be able to benefit my community, there also has to be very clear boundaries and engagement. And I feel like being ill has given me the understanding of why I need to have rules of engagement with me and how much time I invest in all the things I love, bearing in mind if I was to get hit by a bus tomorrow, what legacy do I leave behind? And I've left quite a lot. And there's all this stuff that I do that no one actually ever knows about, but I do them. So I've really enjoyed doing this episode. I really, really have enjoyed it. And I'm not even going to lie, because I've been away for so long, it took me more than 10 minutes to set up my equipment because I almost forgot how to set it up. I know that no one's expecting this episode, so hopefully it is received and appreciated. You know, like when you're perm and you've been ill for a time and they do like a phased return. This is how this episode and the next few months are going to be. It's like a phased return until we can't go back to business as usual. So I think maybe just approach the episode like that. I hope that I'll be able to record next week. If not, maybe the week after. I don't know. But if you think there's anyone that could benefit from this episode or the podcast itself and platform, then be kind enough to just forward it to them. Listen, you can't make people take an interest in bettering their situation when it comes to their career. But sometimes what you can do is offer them an opportunity to. And that's what this podcast is. It's an opportunity. So anyone who you think will benefit from this podcast, from this episode, from the platform, please forward. Anyone who you think will benefit from the masterclasses, please forward. I think the best thing we can do is to create awareness. And one thing I always say is you guys are amazing because you do share the podcast, the platform, you let people know. Even when Kwesi Kwarteng, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, everyone's messaging me saying, Toya, he needs to purchase the Passing Your Probation Masterclass. He clearly didn't have a burn folder, which I thought was quite funny. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow me on social media, because I am active on Instagram, my social media handle is Toya_Washington. My podcast handle is Toya_Talks. Of course, I'm on TikTok. I haven't been uploading, but I do have previously uploaded videos. So it's Toya Washington. Go and have a look. Go and have a listen. And I just want to thank you all for your support. Thank you for joining. Thank you for respecting my boundaries. And more importantly, thank you for always allowing me to create a safe space for us as Black women to come, share, laugh, cry, but more importantly, share our experiences and learn. Because when you learn, we understand and appreciate that power is knowledge. And what happens with knowledge is knowledge becomes the backdrop for changing our situations. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, my name is Toya Washington, and you have definitely been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.